Hey guys, tonight we are stepping into the bustling, chaotic, dust-choked world of ancient Babylon. Not the romanticized ruins or museum exhibits, but the real, gritty version. Think warm goat cheese at sunrise, clay dust in your sandals, and a city that wakes up earlier than you ever agreed to. You find yourself in a small, dim room sunlight, slipping in through a carved wooden shutter. The clay walls are warm from holding in the heat of yesterday. Somewhere nearby, someone is already shouting about dates. The fruit kind, not the romantic kind. You sit up on your reed mat, and your back already regrets this whole adventure. You were hoping for a graceful entrance into history, but Babylon doesn't really do grace. It does noise, movement, and contracts in triplicate. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, if you're listening somewhere far away, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You throw on something loosely woven, some kind of linen tunic, borrowed from your host, and step into the dusty corridor. Your first challenge? The door latch. It's wooden, carved, and suspiciously clever. After a few frustrating clicks and jiggles, you manage to escape into the alleyway with minimal property damage. The city is already alive. Clay ovens puff out steam, children dart between carts, and someone is chasing a runaway goat with the kind of desperation usually reserved for tax season. You step into the street and instantly become part of the flow. This isn't the kind of street where you can walk in a straight line. It's a winding artery of mud brick buildings, hanging laundry, and donkey tail swats. The smells hit you first. Freshly baked barley loaves, boiled garlic, and something deeply fishy that's been left in the sun just a little too long. As you trudge toward the market district, a man with an impossibly wide hat and an even wider smile thrusts something under your nose. Figs. He says something in Akkadian that you don't understand, but his meaning is clear. Be these or deeply offend my ancestors. You smile politely, nod, and keep moving. You are now 3% fig by proximity. Above you, Babylon's famous ziggurat towers in the distance, casting a long shadow over the city's twisting lanes. It's not just a pretty landmark. It's the heartbeat of religious life, and the reason half the people here are sleep-deprived. Priests begin their dawn chants before dawn, and the sound echoes across rooftops like ancient ASMR. You pass a woman drawing water from a communal well, her bronze bracelets clinking softly as she hauls the bucket up. Behind her, 2 children try to balance on a broken cartwheel. One falls off, and the other laughs so hard she snorts. The rhythm of life here is so familiar, it's jarring. For all the cuneiform and carved lions, people still wake up, feed the kids, and yell at goats. As you cross a little wooden bridge, more plank over ditch than real bridge, you almost collide with a procession of men carrying baskets of dried fish. You catch one particularly pungent whiff and gag audibly, causing one of them to grin and mutter something probably unflattering. Historians still argue whether Babylon's early morning fish trade was regulated by temple officials or left to the chaotic mercy of shouting vendors. Either way, you've already stepped in something squishy, and your sandal is now in open rebellion. You reach the edge of the market square just as the noise triples. This is not a gentle farmer's market, with polite conversation and linen aprons. This is an all-out barter war, complete with shoving, shouting, and the occasional thrown melon. You're not even sure where to look first. To your left, a man with blue-dyed robes is arguing with a trader over a cart of onions that may or may not be crying on purpose. To your right, a group of schoolboys recite multiplication tables from clay tablets, their teacher correcting them with a reed stick and a terrifying glare. In front of you, someone is selling amulets shaped like lions, and someone else is offering a back massage that you strongly suspect is not government approved. You take it all in, the people, the heat, the smells, the organized chaos. You glance down and realize you've already collected a thin coat of clay dust. It sticks to your arms, your robe, your forehead. You are now 40% Babylonian by surface texture, and it's only 9 a.m. You pause near a stall, selling perfume oils, tiny clay bottles, each sealed with wax and labeled in cuneiform. The vendor offers you one to sniff. You inhale, and it's a rich, floral scent that momentarily masks the smell of grilled liver and fish guts. It's a moment of unexpected luxury. And then, a donkey sneezes behind you. You've lasted 1 hour in the city, and you're already contemplating whether you can bribe your way back to the present with figs and a slightly guilty conscience. But you're not done yet. There's still flatbread to chase, priests to confuse, and currency to misunderstand. Welcome to Babylon. You wake up for the second time, now fully committed to this historical detour, and immediately question your life choices. The tunic itched all night. You slept on a woven mat stuffed with what you sincerely hope was reeds, and your neck has formed a polite protest kink. But there's no time to wallow. Babylon isn't waiting. The street outside is louder now. The air's still cool, but already carrying the promise of sun-baked clay and roasting barley. You brush off the thin layer of dust that somehow accumulated overnight, and attempt to look purposeful as you rejoin the chaotic pulse of morning traffic. You pass a man walking 3 goats, and what appears to be a very annoyed cat on a leash made from twisted flax. He nods at you like this is all completely normal, which, for Babylon, it is. Your next objective is to blend in, and for that, you need to look the part. The tunic's fine, but your feet are still bare, and you get the feeling that's attracting more attention than you'd like. So you stop at a vendor selling sandals made of tightly woven palm fronds. They don't look especially comfortable, but the shopkeeper offers a deal. 2 sandals for the price of 3. You agree, mostly out of fear. As you tie them on, you realize fashion isn't the only problem. The locals speak Akkadian, a language you absolutely do not. You try to greet a passing woman with what you hope is a friendly, "Good morning," but it comes out closer to, "May your ox be infested with bees." She gives you a startled look, adjusts her basket, and hurries away. You sigh. It's going to be a long day. You trudge deeper into the winding alleys, where sunlight filters through balconies lined with hanging herbs mint, fenugreek, something that might be dried lizard tail. Every corner leads to another tighter lane. The walls lean in slightly, giving you the feeling of being nudged forward by architecture itself. Eventually, the alleys open into a broader avenue lined with tiny household shrines. Most are clay niches pressed into the exterior walls, holding small statues of gods you don't recognize. One with a lion's head, another holding a spade, and one who seems to be giving you a judgmental stare. You nod politely to each of them, just in case. And that's when you see it. The grand northern gate of the inner city. It's massive brick on brick, glazed with brilliant blue tiles that gleam in the early light. Lions, bulls, and dragons parade across its surface in stiff, symmetrical procession. You step closer, mouth open, and a guard promptly blocks your path with a spear. He eyes your dusty tunic and the confused expression plastered across your face. You give him a cheerful wave, which he does not return. Instead, he gestures firmly to the side entrance, clearly the one for sandal-buying, Akkadian butchering tourists like yourself. You take the hint and shuffle sideways. Inside the gate, the traffic swells. Carts packed with grain creak under their weight. A procession of women carries tall jars balanced perfectly on their heads. Children dart around, chasing each other with sticks. And somewhere in the crowd, someone is loudly reciting what sounds like a rental contract. You spot a cluster of men gathered around a stone bench under a fig tree, gesturing emphatically over clay tablets. One of them waves a stylus like it's a sword. Another is chewing a stalk of some kind of grass with the slow, aggressive confidence of someone who definitely thinks he's winning the argument. You inch closer. They're discussing land boundaries specifically, whether the flood moved a property line or just the marker stone. One man insists the river is the boundary. Another claims the river cheats. The third just mutters something about divine will and takes another bite of his grass. Historians still argue whether such legal squabbles were resolved in courts or out in the open like this, though given the tone of this group, you wouldn't bet on any of them backing down. Eventually, the loudest one slams his stylus into the tablet and declares, in a voice that echoes impressively off the walls, that this is why we need more lawyers. You take that as your cue to move along. You cross into another lane and nearly walk into a man balancing a clay jar the size of a sheep on one shoulder. He grunts, shifts the jar, and continues without ever acknowledging your existence. Respect. Around the corner, an older woman is arranging colorful fabrics on a folding stand-dyed linens in teal, russet, and pale saffron. You pause to admire a piece with tiny embroidered lions, and she smiles at you in that universal, ageless way that means, I'm going to sell this to you whether you want it or not. You mime appreciation, then quickly walk away before your coin pouch becomes her prize. It's only been 2 hours since you left your clay cell of a bedroom, and your brain already feels like it's been baked, boiled and rolled in sesame oil. Babylon is not a city for the faint of heart, or the bare of foot. Still, despite the heat, the dust, the sensory overload, you're kind of getting into it. There's something strangely satisfying about getting mildly judged by a lion god statue, miscommunicating in 3 languages, and narrowly avoiding being flattened by a pottery enthusiast. You feel like you've survived the opening level of some ancient video game, and you've earned a break. You slip into the shade of a date palm and exhale. The market's still ahead. The smells of fried chickpea patties drifting your way. But for now, you rest. The fig guy from earlier passes by and nods. You nod back. Somehow, this counts as progress. You rise from beneath the date palm, brushing crushed leaves off your tunic and stretching limbs that are already threatening revolt. The city hasn't quieted. It never really does. But your ears are starting to sort the chaos into categories. Barter shouts over here, goat bleats over there, and somewhere, a long, drawn-out flute trill that may or may not be coming from someone's nose. Time to brave the market proper. As you re-enter the main square, the pace intensifies. The crowd thickens like barley porridge, left too long in the pot. You try to move gracefully through the tide of shoulders, baskets, and elbows, but mostly you look like a startled bird weaving through a stampede. A boy nearly barrels into you, carrying what must be 50 figs in a wide cloth sling. You stagger back into a heap of wool bundles, apologizing to a nearby sheep. That is, to your dismay, extremely real. You are helped to your feet by a woman with arms like temple columns and a gaze that could boil lentils. She dusts you off, nods once, and goes back to arguing about chickpea prices with a man holding a brass scale and a highly skeptical pigeon. You push on. The first stall you approach is bursting with pottery bowls, jars, tiny flasks shaped like birds. One of the vendors notices your interest and begins a rapid-fire explanation of each one's divine purpose. You catch the words blessing, wheat, and squirrel, possibly in that order. You smile, nod, and slowly back away before you're ceremonially blessed and or married to a squirrel deity. Next up is a food stand steaming with freshly cooked flatbreads. The vendor flips one into the air with the flair of a seasoned performer, catches it on a woven plate, and gestures for you to try. You bite into it, and the dough is warm, slightly smoky, and dotted with something green you hope is a herb. You nod appreciatively. The vendor grins and slaps you on the back. Your spine files a complaint. You find yourself drifting toward the textile sellers again, lured by the rustle of indigo and saffron cloths in the breeze. The smell of murex dye, a little fishy, a little salty, lingers over the fabric stall, like a sea breeze that got lost on its way to the Mediterranean. You admire a bolt of teal linen. It's impossibly soft, and way beyond your historical budget. Still, you pretend to consider it seriously, the way one might admire a horse before admitting you can't even ride. Nearby, two scribes argue over a clay tablet ledger. One insists a merchant owes him 3 measures of barley. The other claims it's 2.5, plus a sheep. They are now loudly comparing sheep values. A crowd gathers. One man takes bets. Historians still argue whether Babylonian debts were primarily enforced through temple courts or social pressure. Judging by this scene, public ridicule seems just as effective. You slip away before someone asks you to judge. The heat climbs. The clay between the cobblestones softens. A dog naps in the shadow of a melon cart, its ears twitching at every yell. You almost trip over it, but it doesn't flinch, either fearless or too full of leftover lentils to care. You pause by a stall, selling trinkets, bronze fish charms, bits of lapis lazuli, carved bone combs. One particularly odd item catches your eye, a tiny clay whistle shaped like a lion with wings. You blow it experimentally. It makes a sound not unlike a hiccuping frog. The vendor looks horrified. You apologize, place the whistle back reverently, and pretend it never happened. Further in, you find a corner stall filled with scrolls and tablets. Most are transactional grain tallies, shipping records, debts. But one is clearly a love poem. The scribe catches your eye and recites a line in Akkadian. It sounds beautiful, like wind through papyrus. Then he smiles and translates. Your eyebrows are like twin reeds of divine perfection. You thank him. He bows deeply, perhaps more than necessary. You back away with a smile that says, I appreciate this, but I'm late for a temple appointment. The The crowd surges again, and this time you're carried by it, unwillingly swept into a pocket of musicians banging small hand drums and shaking copper rattles. You clap politely. One of them tosses you a tambourine. You try to return it, but he insists. So now you're playing the tambourine in the middle of a Babylonian market. Your rhythm is questionable at best, but the musician nods approvingly, and that's all the encouragement you need. You tap along until your arms ache, and when you finally stop, the tambourine is passed to a tiny child who somehow plays it better. A woman selling incense waves you over with a curl of fragrant smoke. Her stall is a mosaic of smells: myrrh, cedar, cinnamon, and one scent that makes your eyes water and your soul reconsider its attachment to your sinuses. You buy a small cone of frankincense, mostly to recover your dignity. She tosses in a lump of resin for balance, which you don't understand but accept. Somewhere above the noise, temple bells chime the time an hour before noon. You've only been in the market for the better part of a morning, and already you feel like you've lived 3 lifetimes. The sun climbs higher, gilding rooftops in molten yellow. You duck beneath an awning, sipping from a ceramic cup of something sweet and sharp, a date and vinegar drink that makes your mouth pucker, but wakes you right up. You spot a small shaded niche behind a spice stall and decide to sit for a moment, just to breathe. 2 kids dash past, one clutching what might be your old sandal. You're too tired to care, and from your quiet spot in the shade, you look out across Babylon's market chaotic, loud, fragrant, confusing, beautiful, and think, maybe you could survive this after all. Well, maybe until dinner, refreshed from your moment of relative peace under the awning, you step back into the river of activity, a little more alert now, a little less overwhelmed. The market flows on, unchanged by your brief retreat, like a clay-colored tide that never retreats. You adjust your tunic, pat your coin pouch to confirm it's still attached, mostly, and drift toward the smells that have grown richer, more complex, like someone tossed every spice they had into a pot and dared the world to eat it. You're drawn toward a row of food stalls, where sizzling noises accompany every gesture. Women in linen headscarves stir pots the size of bathtubs with wooden paddles, and young boys ferry bowls to customers at impossible speeds, narrowly avoiding goats, sandals, and each other. You pause at a particularly inviting stand where chickpea fritters are being fried in bubbling oil. The vendor, an older man with forearms like olive trunks, tosses one your way, clearly amused by your wide-eyed stare. You juggle the hot fritter in your hands for a moment before finally biting into it. It's crispy, spiced, and somehow both familiar and brand new. You give a dramatic thumbs up. The vendor grins and flips another into the air. This one lands on a guard's helmet. Nobody reacts. Moving on, you pass a stall where 3 women are threading beads into their hair, chatting animatedly while weaving colored string and tiny bronze fish charms. One of them beckons you closer and gestures toward your extremely unremarkable hair. You decline politely, but she insists, and before long, you're sitting cross-legged on a woven mat, being lightly scolded for your split ends, in what you assume is a friendly tone. She braids a thin cord of saffron-dyed wool into your hair and adds a tiny shell at the end. You are now 7% more fashionable than 5 minutes ago. You thank her awkwardly and carry on, hair swinging jauntily behind you, like the world's least intimidating warrior, As you round the corner into a quieter lane, the scent of fresh herbs overtakes the cooking smoke. A row of apothecary stalls lines this part of the square. You spot bundles of dried mint, jars of honey, strange powders, and roots so gnarled they look like tiny mythical beasts. A man is explaining the benefits of ground date pits for toothaches, while a woman next to him offers a paste guaranteed to make donkeys behave. Historians still argue whether Babylonian medicine leaned more spiritual or empirical, but the phrase blessed by Enki, and also mildly numbing, seems to cover most bases. You pause at a stall where an elderly woman with silver-threaded braids is preparing something in a mortar. She notices you watching and offers a nod. Then she picks up a long, slightly concerning root and mashes it with the solemnity of a priest. She doesn't say a word, just hands you a pinch of the powder and makes a gesture rub it on your temples. You follow the motion and feel a slight tingle, a hint of mint, and what may or may not be a hallucination of a dancing frog. You nod, smile, and leave her a small coin. She nods once more and returns to her crushing with monk-like focus. You pass a group of boys sitting on the ground, playing some kind of board game etched into a clay slab. They glance up as you watch, then scoot aside to make room. You sit, unsure of the rules, but they show you with a combination of pantomime and dramatic size. It involves sticks, beans, and maybe luck, or skill, or possibly astrology. You win your first round entirely by accident. They cheer. You're not sure if they're happy for you, or just impressed by how confused you look. Further along, you find yourself in the leatherworkers' row. Strips of hide hang from wooden frames, and the air is filled with the scent of oil, dye, and sun-baked cow. Artisans cut, stitch, and hammer intricate patterns into satchels, sandals, and oddly shaped pouches. One man shows off a belt pouch that doubles as a sling for particularly unruly ducks. You make a mental note never to own such a duck. As the sun arcs toward its peak, the noise of the market doesn't lessen. It thickens. The heat sets in. The dust rises higher, and you can almost hear the sizzle of sun on clay. A group of flute players huddles in the shade of a fig vendor's canopy, offering a meandering tune that half lulls you into walking into a basket of turnips. You write it quickly and pretend it never happened. At another stall, a pair of young girls sells miniature clay figurines gods, animals, and what appears to be a very judgmental-looking frog. You pick one up, admire its lopsided charm, and hand over a small coin. The girls beam. The frog stares into your soul. You pocket it with care. Hungry again, you circle back to a different corner of the market and find a stall serving something that resembles stew. You sit on a low stool, take a cautious spoonful, and taste lentils, garlic, something tangy like vinegar, and a suggestion of goat. It's hearty, earthy, and makes your insides sigh in gratitude. The woman serving it places a small piece of soft flatbread beside your bowl and pats your shoulder like a proud aunt. You don't know if you'll ever taste anything quite like it again. You linger for a moment after your meal, watching a pair of elderly men perform what looks like a comedic poem near a well. One recites dramatically, while the other makes exaggerated faces and pratfalls. The crowd laughs and claps in bursts. You laugh too, even if the words are beyond you. It's strange how normal it all feels now. The noise doesn't startle you. The smells don't overwhelm. The chaos, well, it still trips you sometimes, but you're learning to sway with it instead of fight against it. You realize you haven't thought about escaping back to the present in a while, and the frog figurine in your pouch now feels less like a souvenir and more like a travel companion. You're halfway through your clay-dusted, sandal-slapping adventure in ancient Babylon, and against all odds, you're kind of thriving. Sort of. At least you haven't been arrested, cursed by a temple priest, or trampled by oxen yet. So let's call that a win. As the midday sun burns its signature into the skyline, you seek shelter in one of the cooler corridors branching off the main square. These alleyways narrow, shaded by wooden balconies and linen canopies fluttering just overhead. The heat doesn't vanish, but it hums instead of screams. The soundscape softens, too less shouting, more murmured negotiations and the soft thump of feet on packed clay. You pass a man carefully arranging loaves of bread in a patterned display spirals, stacks, crescents. Each one bears a thumbprint or symbol on top. You wonder if they're marks of ownership, gods' names, or just someone trying to corner the ancient food branding market. You catch the scent of roasted date syrup and follow it to a tiny stand where a young girl is fanning coals under a clay dish. She's making some kind of sticky pastry, rolling crushed nuts into small rounds and dipping them in syrup that bubbles like lava. She offers you one. You take it. It's sweet, earthy, a little grainy, and completely perfect. You nod, and she gives a tiny, pleased curtsy before returning to her careful caramel watching. Further down the lane, you stumble upon a side courtyard, a small, quiet square with a central basin where birds drink and preen. A man is seated at the edge, humming softly while mending a net. Not a fishing net, but a kind of hammock-sized weave of palm fiber. He glances up, gives a wave, and keeps working. You sit across from him, feeling the cool stones under your legs. No one rushes here. Even the birds look like they're taking their union break. You don't stay long, but long enough to breathe. The moment ends when a small parade passes by. Yes, a parade. Not the kind with floats and glitter. This one features a line of acolytes from a nearby temple, walking solemnly behind a man in a heavy robe who is carrying what appears to be a sacred turnip, or possibly a carved stone that resembles a root vegetable. Either way, it looks very serious. Everyone in the courtyard stands as the procession goes by. You follow suit, because nothing ruins a historical vacation faster than blasphemy. Once the last acolyte passes, conversation resumes like someone hit unpause. You step into a nearby workshop where artisans shape bitumen-coated baskets, mold clay into lamp shapes, and hammer thin copper sheets into decorative pins. The rhythmic tapping of tools on metal is oddly soothing, like the world's oldest ASMR track. A boy working near the door waves you over and shows you a tiny spoon carved from bone. He mimes using it to scoop something and points to your coin pouch. You shake your head and gesture, just looking, and he shrugs with the detached grace of a sales prodigy. Historians still debate how apprenticeships worked in cities like Babylon. Some say children were tied to family trades. Others claim guild-like systems existed for crafts. What's clear is that this kid is better at marketing than you ever were. Wandering out again, you pass a row of water sellers shouting about freshness and purity. One man insists his water was poured by the gods, though his jug is suspiciously dusty. Another offers cucumber slices in his jar, unusual, fragrant, and oddly refreshing. You buy a cup and instantly regret all prior hydration decisions. The cucumber water renews your spirit just in time for your next social obstacle. A wedding party. Yes, you've accidentally wandered into the tail end of what seems to be a marriage celebration. Musicians play tambourines and double-reed flutes, while guests toss flower petals and sing in rounds. The couple, clad in richly embroidered robes, walk side by side, not touching, but radiating that just-married energy of exhausted joy. You clap along, caught in the current of celebration. Someone hands you a handful of petals. You toss them into the air and pretend this was absolutely part of your plan. The wedding route peels away toward a residential courtyard, and you find yourself back in another cluster of food stalls, though these ones seem more medicinal. One is advertising digestion-enhancing chickpea mash, while another promises spleen-balancing lentil broth. You suddenly feel very aware of your spleen. A woman calls to you from behind a curtain-draped booth and waves a small scroll. Curious, you approach. It's a chart astrological, maybe? Circular patterns, glyphs, tiny etched constellations. She asks your birth month. You try to mime it. She nods solemnly and declares you to be of the goat. You're unsure whether to feel proud, humbled, or mildly hungry. She hands you a tiny token-stamped disc of clay with a goat symbol and a wavy line. You nod in thanks and move along before she asks for payment in teeth or dreams. The shadows start to shift, and the energy of the market does too. Not quieter, exactly, just softer. A wind stirs the dust into lazy spirals, and a flock of birds sails over the rooftops, like they're late for a celestial appointment. You step aside to avoid a cart, bearing amphorae of olive oil. The driver yells good-naturedly, a phrase you choose to interpret as, "Watch your toes, time traveler." You round a final bend and discover what looks like a small temple annex turned marketplace library. Low shelves hold clay tablets, stamped with wedge-shaped cuneiform, and a priest, or maybe just a very literate man, offers to recite one. You nod. He selects a tablet and begins to read, voice low and musical. It's an agricultural calendar, listing planting times, offerings for various field gods, and the best days to bake barley bread. You sit, knees crossed, soothed by the rhythm of it all. By the time he finishes, your mind feels softened like wet clay, ready to be shaped. You rise, bow slightly, and leave a small coin on the mat. Then, one last surprise. As you turn to leave, you pass a wall covered in painted symbols, mythic beasts, sacred trees, stars, a serpent coiled around a wheel. It's a mural, fading from sun and time, but still vivid enough to feel alive. You reach out and touch one corner. It's warm, not just from the sun, but from Babylon itself. You blink, and the mural seems to shimmer. Or maybe that's just the heat playing tricks on your vision. Either way, you step back from the painted wall with a strange sense that you've been granted some kind of ancient approval, like a nod from the city itself. You don't want to get too poetic about it, but also, you've just survived 6 hours in Babylon without accidentally offending a deity or trading your sandals for a goat. So you're feeling bold. You stretch your arms toward the sun, which now hangs directly overhead like a lazy coin on the sky's palm. The light reflects off rooftops, drying puddles in the street and making the clay walls glow like baked honey. Your stomach reminds you it's time for another break, so you look around for something lunch-adjacent. You follow the scent of spices, cardamom, coriander, toasted sesame and land at a corner where several food stalls form a sort of triangle around a communal bench shaded by a canvas tarp. You ease down onto a woven mat and watch as a vendor ladles out a thick lentil stew, rich with herbs and tiny crumbles of cheese. You order a bowl with the confidence of someone who's been here at least a little while. The vendor raises one eyebrow, perhaps impressed, perhaps suspicious, but serves you anyway. You dig in. The stew is warm, savory, and speckled with something tangy that might be dried pomegranate seed. Across from you, two merchants argue over dates. Not romantic ones. Literal dates. The fruit. You understand maybe one word in 20, but the tone is unmistakable. One claims his dates are from Uruk. The other insists his are kissed by the western sun. They both gesture at you. You panic and nod at both. They seem pleased. You've accidentally validated two rival supply chains. You're practically part of the economic system now. After finishing your stew, you thank the vendor with a small bow and step back into the dusty thoroughfare. The tempo has slowed a little. The sun has finally started its gentle lean westward, and some of the vendors are rearranging their goods in the shade. Clay pots are misted with water. Pigeons argue on rooftops. You stroll past a musician tuning a stringed instrument that looks like it might double as a weapon. He plucks out a low, melody, sleepy, sweet, and someone tosses him a fig. You're not sure if that's payment or a snack, but he accepts it gracefully. Ahead, a group of children plays a game with pebbles and a grid drawn into the dust. They invite you to join, and you crouch down, unsure of the rules, but willing to try. One girl shows you how to flick the stones with your fingertips. You attempt it, and the stone ricochets off your own knee. She giggles and pats your arm like, "Don't worry, foreigner. You tried. There's a comfort here you didn't expect. People laugh easily. They argue, sure, but not in that modern, soul-depleting way. Disputes end with shrugs, shared bread, or loudly exaggerated stories about goats. You're starting to feel like less of an observer and more like a participant in this chaotic, sunlit poem of a place. You drift toward the edge of the market, where the buildings grow shorter and more irregular. Here, artisans work outside potters spinning lazy wheels, painters detailing small statues of gods, and weavers knotting intricate patterns into rugs so fine they seem unreal. A young man sits cross-legged on a mat, threading gold wire through beads made of lapis lazuli. He hums as he works. You stop to admire, and he beckons you over. He doesn't speak much, but he shows you how to pinch and twist the wire without breaking it. You try. You fail. He laughs and gently takes the work back. Historians still debate whether luxury items in Babylon were reserved strictly for elites or filtered down into the hands of everyday citizens through trade and gifting, judging by this weaver's confident craftsmanship and his casual sharing of technique. Maybe the line was blurrier than we think. You leave with a small beat a mistake, perhaps, or a kindness. He presses it into your palm without a word. Further on, you pass what looks like a miniature stage. Two older men sit on tall stools, taking turns telling stories to a small, appreciative crowd. One acts out a tale involving a lion, a pot of honey, and a very slow-moving turtle. The audience roars. The turtle voice is apparently famous around here. You stay to listen. Even if the words don't always make sense, the rhythm does. You laugh when the crowd laughs. You wince when the turtle falls into a well. You cheer when he's fished out using a basket and a lot of yelling. You wonder if this was the original Netflix. Eventually, you wander toward the city wall, where a shaded nook offers a rare breeze. Someone nearby is selling chilled pomegranate juice in ceramic cups. You take one, sip slowly, and feel the juice stain your teeth red like some kind of cheerful vampire. The outer edge of the market feels less frantic, more like a cool-down lap after a sprint. You watch a woman scold her son for throwing pebbles at chickens. You spot a man offering miniature oil lamps shaped like fish. One accidentally lights itself. He stomps it out, with the weary efficiency of someone who's done this before. A goat wanders past with a basket strapped to its side. You make eye contact. The goat seems unimpressed. You tip your cup in a silent toast. From here, you can see the faint silhouette of the ziggurat again, now with its top glowing gently in the afternoon light. It feels impossibly distant, and yet somehow still part of your story. You imagine the priests up there now, reading stars or arguing about rainfall predictions. The wind kicks up a swirl of dust and flower petals, catching your tunic and sending a few loose hairs dancing across your face. You close your eyes. You're still dusty, your sandals still questionable, and your Acadian still non-existent. But you belong here just a little more than you did this morning. And as the bells begin to ring again, 3 soft chimes from somewhere above the rooftops, you realize you've stopped counting time by the sun. Now, you count by smells, sounds, and the way the dust shifts underfoot when the breeze blows through Babylon. The afternoon sun dips lower, mellowing from its earlier blaze into a rich golden haze. Shadows lengthen across the alleyways, stretching like sleepy cats between the mud brick walls. You follow the slow river of people, migrating from the heat of the market toward quieter corners of the city. Some carry bundles, others sing softly to themselves. A few drag carts with wheels that wobble like they've had one too many fermented date drinks. Your path leads you toward one of the city's communal wells. It's a stone circle shaded by palm fronds and lined with people waiting their turn. You join the queue, behind a man with a wicker basket full of leeks and a toddler who is trying to eat said leeks. The man does not notice. When it's your turn, a teenage boy hands you the rope tied to the water jar. It's heavier than you expect. As you haul it up hand over hand, the rope rough against your palms, you notice how the clay jar creaks and splashes. There's something deeply calming about this simple motion work that is pure and obvious. Pull water from earth. Don't fall in. You take a sip from a shared ladle cool, faintly earthy, and more refreshing than anything bottled in your time. A woman nearby hands you a bit of cloth to wipe your hands, then nods approvingly at your effort. You feel weirdly proud. From there, your feet guide you toward a low building painted with faded murals' geometric borders, lotus flowers, and the unmistakable curve of a fish-headed god. This, it turns out, is a neighborhood shrine. Modest but serene. People drift in and out with offerings in handbread, a small clay bowl of oil, even a loop of flowers likely picked from someone's rooftop garden. You enter quietly. The cool air inside is thick with incense frankincense, maybe with notes of cedar, and something musky you can't identify. It wraps around you like a blanket for the soul. An old woman tends to a lamp in the corner, murmuring under her breath. She doesn't look up, but somehow still acknowledges your presence. There's no dramatic altar, no grand speech, just a simple platform where offerings are placed, and behind it, a low niche in the wall with a worn figurine. It's difficult to tell which deity it is, somewhere between a fish a human, and a very smug owl, but people clearly care for it. You place one of your precious coins on the edge of the platform, then pause, and place the frog figurine next to it. It feels right, like sharing a private joke with the universe. Outside again, the sunlight is now filtered and dappled, sliding through the leaves of fig trees planted along a narrow walkway. You wander along the path until you reach a modest courtyard filled with laughter and the clatter of small clay game pieces. It's a public gaming spot, kind of like a Babylonian board game cafe, minus the espresso and existential dread. You sit and observe as two older women battle it out over a board, etched into a low table. The game involves tiny black and white stones, and from the way they scowl and gesture, it seems extremely competitive. One slaps the table, the other snorts and flicks a piece across the board. The crowd gasps. Someone passes you a honeyed date. You chew it slowly, savoring the taste as the game ends with a flurry of cheers and mock outrage. The losing player insists the gods interfered. The winner simply smirks and adjusts her scarf like a champion. Feeling rested and oddly full of joy, you follow the scent of smoke and stew toward a nearby street, where clay ovens glow like miniature volcanoes. Here, the city's bakers work late into the day. You see men hauling flat loaves from domed ovens with long wooden paddles, steam pouring out in warm bursts. You spot women shaping dough into spirals and crescents, decorating them with sesame seeds or tiny thumb-pressed symbols. One baker sees you watching and offers you a burnt edge from a still steaming loaf. You accept without hesitation. The crust is crunchy, the inside fluffy, and it carries just a whisper of smoke and salt. He mimes more, and you enthusiastically nod. You trade another coin. You're down to your last few, for a full loaf wrapped in palm frond. You cradle it like treasure. As you continue wandering, the breeze carries the sound of a flute low, meandering, like a tune lost in thought. You follow it instinctively until you reach a rooftop courtyard, open to the sky. A few people are gathered there, reclining on cushions. Someone plays the flute. Someone else pours drinks from a painted jar. You're invited to join without fanfare. A place is made for you. A cup is offered. The drink is fermented barley mild, sweet, slightly fizzy. It makes your cheeks warm and your thoughts a little slow in a pleasant, syrupy way. Conversation drifts around you, mostly incomprehensible, but full of laughter and soft exclamations. Someone points at the horizon, where the sun has begun its slow descent, staining the sky orange and lavender. Even the ziggurat seems gentler now, its silhouette blushing in the fading light. One man leans back and starts reciting something. A poem? A riddle? Whatever it is, it holds the group in a bubble of silence until the last word drifts away. Historians still argue whether rooftop socializing in Babylon was widespread or reserved for the upper class. But tonight, you don't care. You're just grateful someone made space for you in this moment, in this version of the past. You lean your head back, gaze up at the first few stars blinking into view, and sigh so deeply you almost forget what century you're from. It's hard to imagine going back. The roof tiles are warm beneath you. The flute plays one last note and falls quiet. Someone yawns. Someone else stretches. You think maybe you'll stay just a little longer, just until moonrise. The moon creeps above the rooftops like it's peeking in on a secret gathering, and maybe it is. Babylon after dusk hums with a different kind of energy. Gone is the bright-eyed chaos of the morning. In its place is something slower, softer, like the whole city has taken a deep breath and exhaled into the night. You rise from your rooftop perch, legs a little stiff, and make your way carefully down the staircase. The stairs are uneven, carved more by familiarity than engineering. You pass a family lighting small clay lamps along their doorway. A boy holds the wick, while his mother strikes a spark with 2 bits of ironstone. He beams when the flame catches. You smile. The boy waves like he's known you forever. Back on the street, the air is cooler now, but still carries that baked clay warmth trapped from the day. It's fragrant part charcoal smoke, part night flowers, part mysterious something that might be goat-related. You don't question it. You follow a cluster of lanterns bobbing ahead of you. They lead toward the edge of a neighborhood square, where a small gathering has formed around a storyteller seated on an upturned basket. Children sit cross-legged at her feet. Parents lean against the walls, arms folded, faces open. The storyteller holds a carved staff and speaks in low, steady tones, painting the night with tales of trickster gods and star-born rivers. You don't understand every word, but the rhythm pulls you in. At one point, the children gasp in unison, then burst into laughter. You laugh too, not at the joke, which you've missed entirely, but at the pure sound of joy carried on desert wind. The story ends with applause, soft and genuine, like the closing of a lullaby. The woman bows slightly, then picks up her basket and disappears down an alley that wasn't there before. Or maybe you just hadn't noticed it. You move on, feet crunching lightly over scattered petals and husks. A breeze swirls past, sending a thin veil of dust into the moonlight. It sparkles, and for a second, you imagine Babylon is casting its own kind of quiet magic. Your wanderings lead you toward the ziggurat not all the way to its base, but close enough to see the torchlight outlining its terraced steps. It's massive in a way that makes your chest tighten. Ancient, yes, but also surprisingly alive. A heartbeat made of stone and ritual. You pause near a small plaza where musicians have begun playing low drums and hand cymbals. A group of dancers forms a mix of children, young adults, and one gray-haired man who moves like he's part wind, part memory. Their dance isn't rehearsed, but flows with the music, arms sweeping, feet tapping, laughter rising. You watch for a while, then someone nudges you lightly and gestures for you to join. You hesitate, but then again, you've already bartered with a fig vendor, played a pebble game with school children, and shared stew with complete strangers. Why stop now? So you step in. You try to mimic the rhythm, the soft, shuffle step twist, and the way everyone seems to know exactly when to spin. You're absolutely terrible. But they cheer you on anyway, and that makes you better. Not good, but better. You dance until your breath comes short, and your cheeks glow with heat. Then you bow awkwardly and step out again, heart light, limbs loose. A vendor nearby is selling little cups of sweetened wine, infused with herbs. You take one. It tastes like fermented sun, and something faintly like thyme. You sip and sit on a low stone wall, watching the world settle into its nighttime rhythm. A priest walks past in deep blue robes, head bowed, hands clasped around a scroll. A cat follows him, tail held high like it owns the place. It probably does. In a quieter lane, you hear the sounds of a family singing, just a mother, maybe, and her child. A gentle melody floats down from a balcony, the words half lost in the breeze, but filled with love all the same. Historians still argue whether ancient Babylonians sang lullabies with words or tones alone, but tonight you hear both, and they are enough. You wander once more, almost dreamlike now, your steps slow and unhurried. You pass a mural you'd missed earlier, tucked behind a stall, closed for the night. It shows a river goddess, her arms outstretched, fish swimming from her hands, birds perched on her shoulders. The paint is faded, chipped in places, but her face still holds that quiet knowing. You place your palm against the edge of the image, just long enough to feel the chill of stone. Then, on a whim, you turn down a narrow alley, lit by flickering lanterns and framed by high walls. You emerge into a courtyard dotted with low, sleeping mats, most of them empty now, though a few are already claimed by snoring figures and the occasional cat loaf. You spot an unclaimed mat in the corner, shaded by an awning and tucked beneath a fig tree. Its leaves rustle gently, like an invitation. You ease down, lay your head back, and let your fingers trace little arcs in the dust. You're not tired exactly, but you are quiet, still, present in a way that you rarely allow yourself to be in your usual life. A final breeze skims your cheek, and somewhere overhead, a bird calls out, once, twice, then falls silent. You close your eyes, your ears full of fading drums and laughter, and the endless hush of a city that never truly sleeps, but sometimes dreams. And tonight, you dream with it. You don't remember drifting off, but when you stir again, it's because something soft and persistent is brushing against your foot. You crack one eye open to find the courtyard bathed in the dusty blue of pre-dawn Babylon's in-between time. Not quite night, not quite morning. The fig tree above you still whispers softly, its leaves trembling in a breeze that smells faintly of river mud and bread flour. The thing at your foot turns out to be a cat, of course. A lean, striped creature with a torn ear and the disdainful stare of a deity. It blinks at you once, decides you're useless, and pads away like it's got temple appointments to keep. You sit up slowly, your bones making quiet complaints. Nearby, someone is already sweeping the courtyard, an elderly man with a broom made from tied reeds. He hums under his breath, a tune older than the dust itself. You nod to him, and he nods back, like you've always belonged here. The air is crisp, the city not yet awake, and you take this quiet window as a gift. You stretch, rise, and head toward the alley, guided by the smell of yeast and charcoal. A baker's fire has been lit. You can hear the pop of embers and the soft whump as dough hits clay. You follow the scent to a tiny stall built right into the wall. The baker is already at work, his arms white with flour. A child perched nearby counting loaves aloud. You raise a hand in greeting and point to a small, round loaf already cooling on a wooden board. He grins, hands it over. No coin is asked. Maybe your terrible dancing from last night made you famous. Or maybe the baker just has a soft spot for sleep-crumpled travelers. The bread is warm, dense, chewy, faintly sweet from date syrup, or maybe just kindness. You eat as you walk, watching as the city begins to blink awake. Shutters creak open. Someone mutters about water jugs. A rooster announces its deeply unwelcome opinion from a rooftop. You head toward the riverbank now, drawn by the sound of oars and gulls. The Euphrates flows quietly at this hour, catching the morning light like molten silver. Traders are already unloading cargo from reed boats, ceramic jars, baskets of grain. bundles wrapped in wool. The men work in practiced silence, calling instructions only when absolutely necessary. A young woman near the water's edge washes linens in the shallows. She sings as she works, her voice soft and strong. A melody meant more for the river than for anyone listening. You sit on a flat stone nearby, finishing the last bite of your breakfast, and feel something close to contentment settle over you. Not far from here, a group of temple workers in white robes gathers for morning rituals. They carry small offerings, grain, fruit, something wrapped in palm leaves, and walk in slow procession toward a low structure set apart from the bustle. Its walls are adorned with tiles that catch the light in blues and greens, the glazes shimmering like dragonfly wings. You don't follow them. Some things are best watched from a respectful distance. Instead, you turn toward a long colonnade, just waking up. Merchants sweep the thresholds of their shops, preparing for the next wave of business. A man sharpens a bronze blade. Another arranges dyed cloths in perfect triangles. You pause at a small stand, where a girl is sketching figures into a clay tablet with a reed stylus. She glances up and gestures for you to try. You kneel beside her, awkwardly gripping the stylus, and attempt to draw something. It looks like a startled potato. She giggles, erases it with her thumb, and shows you how to shape a proper symbol. Historians still debate whether literacy in Babylon was strictly the domain of scribes, or more broadly shared. Judging by this girl's steady hand and tiny smirk, some people just picked it up between chores. You give your stylus a dramatic bow, and she awards you a clay shard with your name, or at least a hopeful approximation of it, carved into one side. You tuck it into your pouch beside the goat amulet, your fish-shaped lamp, and whatever shred of dignity you've managed to retain. Your next stop is a small garden, nestled between two homes. It's nothing grand, just a few planters, vines climbing up sticks, a fig tree, and something that might be coriander. But it's green. In this clay and sun city, green feels like a miracle. An older woman tends the garden, whispering to the plants as she waters them. She catches you watching and invites you in with a gesture. You kneel beside her and help pluck wilted leaves, placing them gently into a basket. The soil is cool beneath your fingers. A lizard watches from the wall with the quiet judgment of something that has seen every sunrise. She offers you a sprig of mint, presses it into your palm, and pats your hand. You feel honored, like you've passed a test you didn't even know you were taking. As you leave the garden, a sudden clatter interrupts the peace. Down the street, a cart has lost a wheel and tipped dramatically, spilling jars of olives across the road. People rush to help, some out of kindness, some out of hope for a free snack. You join in, dodging a particularly enthusiastic goat in the process. The driver thanks everyone profusely, especially you, and offers a jar of intact olives as a token of gratitude. You accept, knowing full well that olives for breakfast is now your new normal. You carry them with you as you climb a narrow staircase to a roof terrace, a quiet spot with a view of the city's skyline, domes, palms, balconies, and that ever-present ziggurat keeping silent watch. You sit cross-legged, open the jar, and munch an olive as the sun finally crests the eastern horizon in full. It washes over the rooftops like honey on a warm loaf, turning the dust golden, the air soft. Somewhere, someone strikes a gong. Morning has officially arrived. And you're still here, still dusty, still slightly lost, and yet somehow, entirely where you're meant to be. The sun now lifts fully above the horizon, and with it, the city of Babylon stretches into another round of daily rituals, chores, and cheerful commotion. You sip the last of the olive brine from the jar, salty, strange, but weirdly satisfying, and wipe your fingers on the hem of your robe, which now bears a respectable number of market stains and dust smudges. A fine travelogue in fabric form. You descend from the rooftop and rejoin the street just in time to be passed by a gang of sleepy-eyed schoolboys, clay tablets slung under their arms, and sandals flapping against their heels. They're headed toward the scribal school, a modest brick building, not far from the ziggurat where dreams of becoming royal scribes, or at least competent accountants, are carefully drilled into young minds one wedge-shaped mark at a time. You follow them at a polite distance, ducking past a pair of boys mid-argument about multiplication. When they notice you, one points at your robe and says something that makes the others snicker. You assume it's fashion-related. You smile like you understand. You don't. The school itself is surprisingly open, no heavy doors, just an arched entrance and shaded alcoves filled with stone benches and low tables. An instructor, stern-faced and wiry, claps his hands once, summoning silence that arrives with almost magical speed. He raises a reed stylus dramatically, then lowers it to a tablet. The students follow suit. A rhythm of tapping begins. Tap, press, scratch. Tap, press, scratch. The cuneiform dance. One boy fumbles and drops his tablet. It hits the ground with a soft thud. The instructor closes his eyes, takes a breath that clearly draws on ancient reservoirs of patience, and then begins reciting a proverb about clumsy hands and sacred ink. The class repeats it in sing-song unison. You mouth the words too, though you're pretty sure you're saying something closer to fried goat hats than anything educational. You linger at the edge of the school for a while, watching the lessons unfold. Grammar, numbers, even a short hymn to one of the local deities that seems to involve an unusually helpful otter. Historians still debate whether such scribal schools were limited to elite families, or if promising kids from artisan backgrounds could sneak in through talent or connections. Judging by the wide mix of accents and sandals here, maybe both were true. Eventually, you slip away and make your way back toward the more residential quarters of the city. Here, the rhythm is calmer, less shouting, more sweeping. The walls are lower, doorways wide open to let in the breeze, and the aroma of lentils and herbs wafts lazily from kitchens. You pass a woman dyeing cloth in large clay basins. The colors are glorious deep indigo, rich saffron, a green that might have been stolen from a peacock. She stirs the cloth with a wooden pole, then lifts it out, letting the fabric drip and twist in the morning light, like a banner in slow motion. Nearby, two young men unload baskets of firewood and stack them with the efficiency of practiced hands. You offer to help, and though they clearly don't expect you to manage much, they accept. The wood is heavier than it looks. You carry 4 pieces before realizing your arms are not in agreement with this life choice. They smile politely as you retire yourself from labor. One of them offers you a sliver of honeycomb as a reward for trying. You accept. The sweetness explodes on your tongue, sticky and golden. You chew it thoughtfully as you continue your wanderings. Soon, you find yourself back at the little shrine you visited earlier, the one with the fish-headed god and the faded murals. It's quieter now, the doorway shaded and empty. You step inside once more. The oil lamp you saw earlier still flickers, though the room feels cooler. You kneel, just briefly, not out of obligation, but out of some curious blend of respect and habit. You place a flat stone you picked up along the riverbank beside your frog figurine. Your own tiny altar, assembling itself. You exit again, blinking in the bright light, and decide it's time for a more substantial meal. You wind your way back to a corner of the market, where food vendors are setting up for the midday crowd. One man with a thick mustache and a pot the size of a small well is ladling out chickpea stew into shallow bowls. The scent is incredible smoky, tangy, with the kind of slow-cooked depth that suggests several generations may live inside that pot. You trade your last copper token for a bowl and sit on the curb to eat. It's not glamorous, but it is perfect. You eat slowly, savoring every bite, every flavor of salt, cumin, onion, and something spicy that waits politely before kicking your tongue. A boy walks by selling flatbread wrapped around grilled fish. A dog follows him like a devoted disciple. You consider following too, but decide one meal is enough for now. As you finish, a parade of sorts begins to form along the street. A group of temple attendants carrying instruments, garlands of flowers, and an enormous wooden effigy of a lion. They chant in rhythm, not loud but firm, and neighbors gather to watch with mild interest. A child beside you claps her hands in time with the drumming. You do too, and she grins, a gap-toothed flash of approval. You're part of the crowd now, even if just for a moment. The procession passes. The crowd disperses like dust in a breeze. You rise, brush off your robe, and notice just how much of Babylon now clings to you. On your clothes, in your nose, in the little beat of your steps that seems more rhythmic now than it did yesterday. You think of time, how it stretches differently here, how an hour feels full, how a moment becomes a memory with the speed of a sneeze, and you haven't sneezed in a while. Either you've acclimated, or Babylon is going easy on you. You smile at that thought, and make your way slowly down a new street, past unfamiliar doorways, toward whatever adventure comes next. The new street you're following is narrower than the others, a quiet corridor between buildings, where the sunlight falls in slanted bands, and the walls still hold a bit of morning chill. You trail your fingers along the mud brick surface as you walk. It crumbles ever so slightly beneath your touch, leaving a whisper of clay dust on your fingertips. You don't have a destination. Babylon decides for you now. At the end of the lane, the space opens suddenly into a courtyard with a fountain well. What passes for a fountain? It's a clay basin fed by a clever series of channels dug into the earth, bringing water from the nearby well. A boy with a chipped ceramic bowl is herding a trio of small goats into the corner to keep them from drinking all of it. He waves as you pass, clearly mistaking you for someone he knows. You wave back. It's easier than explaining time travel. You continue on and find yourself back near the administrative quarter, where rows of slightly more polished buildings stand tall with arched doorways and etched lintels. Men in long, neatly belted robes carry clay tablets in both hands, muttering to themselves. These are scribes' official ones, the kind that can record a dowry, calculate grain tax, and casually ruin your week with a misplaced wedge mark. You hover nearby, curious. A man with a sharp beard and a stack of tablets looks up and catches your eye. He raises a brow, then gestures for you to come closer. You obey. instinctively adopting your most helpful expression, the one you reserve for customs officers and distant relatives with complicated tech questions. He hands you a tablet. On it, rows of cuneiform numbers. He points at a string of symbols, and then at a jar of lentils nearby. You are being tested, or possibly pranked. You nod, as if understanding, then begin moving lentils between two bowls, while muttering made-up syllables under your breath. The man watches for a moment, then miraculously nods. He hands you a small, hard biscuit as a reward. It tastes like someone baked a coin, but it's oddly satisfying. Historians still argue whether Babylonian clerks used lentils for math drills or just had poor snack planning. Either way, you've just passed a local exam in legume-based accounting. You thank the man with a clumsy bow and back away, narrowly avoiding bumping into a tax collector whose expression suggests he has never smiled and never will. You take the long way around after that. The sun is climbing, and the city begins to shimmer with heat. From somewhere behind a wall, the metallic clatter of a loom picks up. You peek through an opening and see a row of women weaving a rhythmic dance of thread and shuttle. Indigo-dyed yarn stretches in long, taut lines. Their hands move so fast you wonder how many fingers you're not seeing. They're chatting, laughing even. The one woman is clearly leading the conversation with a long story that involves a neighbor's missing chicken and a suspicious merchant. You smile, unseen, and move on, soothed by the steady clack-clack of the loom fading behind you. Not far from there, you reach a building fronted by carved lions, stylized, blocky, and full of personality. This is no shop or bakery. This is a law house, a court of sorts, where disputes are aired and records kept with the kind of care usually reserved for royal weddings and garden gnome arrangements. A group of people stands outside, gesturing in heated but quiet debate. You recognize a few phrases: land, dowry, 3 goats. Classic legal drama. You linger only a moment before the tension makes you itch, and you slip away toward something less likely to end with someone yelling in Akkadian. You head toward the riverbank again, where things feel simpler. A man is sketching a boat into the dust with a stick, explaining something to a boy who squints and shakes his head. Eventually, the man shrugs and tosses the stick into the water. Fair enough. You find a shady spot beneath a fig tree and watch as a group of older men nearby play a game with smooth stones and a carved board set into the earth. You can't follow the rules, but you can tell who's winning by the grumbling. One man offers you a stone, a challenge. You accept. You play. You lose. Magnificently. But they clap your shoulder and offer you dried apricots anyway. Consolation prize or initiation. The apricots are chewy, sweet, and taste faintly of dust and sun. From here, the city stretches in all directions, alive with sound bells, laughter, distant chants, the rumble of carts and stubborn donkeys. You realize you've stopped trying to keep track of what time it is. Babylon doesn't care about your watch or your bedtime. The market is stirring again. You return, drawn by the wave of scent-grilled onions, crushed mint, roasted meat. You pass a stall selling dyed sandals and nearly buy a pair before remembering your host's warning about market leather. Apparently, some things are dyed with methods best left unspoken. You continue, weaving between vendors and overheard conversations. Someone is telling a story about a dream where a fish spoke fluent Sumerian. Someone else is trying to sell bricks with lucky cracks. Someone is loudly losing an argument with a parrot that's been trained to shout liar. You make your way to the edge of the square, where a man sits cross-legged, carving something from bone and amulet, maybe, shaped like a lion's paw. You watch, mesmerized by his steady hand and the slow emergence of form from blank ivory. He sees you and holds it up. You nod, and he smiles before returning to his work, the kind of interaction that says, "We met, briefly, in the great novel of history." As the afternoon stretches forward, the shadows begin to return, curling at the edges of doorways, slipping into corners. You're tired, not just physically, but in the way a traveler is, after absorbing too much color, too much noise, too many lives not their own. So you walk quietly now, away from the crowd, your ears ringing with the echoes of voices you didn't understand, but still somehow heard. You don't know where you're going, only that Babylon will get you there. You follow a quieter road now, one that curls gently between houses where the air smells of clay and simmering herbs. The midday heat hums in the background like a drowsy bee, coaxing the city into its slow, slanted rhythm. Even Babylon, it seems, has a moment of pause. Though pause here doesn't mean silence, it just means fewer shouting donkeys. You duck beneath a low archway draped in woven cloth to escape the heat. The shade feels sacred. Inside the courtyard beyond, a woman is tending to earthen jars balanced in a stone trough. She's cooling them with ladles of water, humming something tuneless but oddly soothing. You nod in greeting. She nods back without stopping, as if you were simply another part of the scenery. Next to the jars sits a basket of pomegranates, deep red, heavy with promise. She offers you one with a flick of her chin. You crack it open slowly, revealing the gem-like seeds inside, and eat a few while she returns to her work. The juice stains your fingers, sticky and sweet, and you suspect that Babylon now owns you, body and snack. Outside again, the streets carry the lazy, golden light of late afternoon. You spot a group of boys throwing stones into ceramic jars, some version of a game, though the scoring system appears completely incomprehensible. They shout, laugh, argue. A jar tips over and cracks. They all run. A woman emerges from a doorway, waving her arms and muttering. You choose not to interpret. Further on, a street musician has set up in front of a small temple wall. He plays a stringed instrument that looks somewhere between a harp and a turtle. The notes are dry and metallic, like birds calling in a canyon. A few coins clink into a bowl at his feet. You add one and receive a wink in return. Down an alley, you catch the scent of something burning, but in a good way. You follow it to a courtyard where several women are baking flatbreads on inverted clay domes. One waves you over, and without asking, hands you a disk of bread the size of your head, still warm and blistered from the fire. You tear off a piece and eat as you walk. It tastes of ash and sun and generosity. A perfect Babylonian bite. The alleys twist again, and you find yourself in a part of town you don't recognize. Quieter, a little older. The buildings here lean in toward each other, their upper stories nearly touching, casting long shadows that weave together across the cobbles. You pass what looks like a private library. At least, that's what you guess from the shelves, visible through the open doorway. Clay tablets are stacked neatly on ledges. A man with ink-stained fingers brushes dust from one and mutters something about silt accounting in Uruk. You don't go in, but you pause to listen. The man recites quietly to himself, syllables rolling off his tongue like pebbles down a riverbank. Historians still debate how accessible knowledge was to the average Babylonian, whether these little troves of wisdom were open to wandering nobodies like you. But today, you are allowed to listen. That's enough. Your feet carry you forward again, onto a small footbridge that spans a narrow irrigation canal. Beneath it, frogs croak and reeds sway. A girl stands barefoot in the water, pulling weeds with surprising focus. She glances up, grins, and holds up a wriggling fish before tossing it into a basket. You clap politely. She rolls her eyes with practiced teenage disapproval. On the other side of the canal, a small workshop hums with quiet activity. Inside, a man carves designs into what looks like a ceremonial bowl, swirling patterns of stars, fish, and strange birds. His apprentice, no more than 9 years old, hands him tools and tries not to look bored. You step in, nod politely, and admire their work. The man gestures to a finished bowl and taps it lightly. It rings like a bell. You smile and press a finger to your chest, your best attempt at beautiful. He beams. Outside again, you pass a group of older women spinning thread in the shade of a fig tree. Their hands move with unconscious precision, turning raw fiber into delicate strands. They speak in the low, flowing tone of people who've had the same conversation for decades and never grown tired of it. One looks up, offers you a stool, and for a few precious minutes, you sit among them, watching as time loops itself into thread. You rise, bow slightly, and continue your slow, aimless pilgrimage. A few streets down, you hear raised voices, not angry, just theatrical. You round the corner and discover a tiny impromptu play being acted out in a courtyard. 2 men wear masks, and one pretends to faint dramatically into a pile of laundry. Children giggle from the edges, and someone throws a fig. The play ends in mock tragedy and real applause. A woman hands the dead actor a cup of water, and he springs back to life with a flourish. You drop a dried apricot into a waiting bowl and receive a bow in return. As the sun begins to tilt toward the horizon, the city grows gold again. Shadows stretch long and soft across the walls. The air turns richer, thicker with the scent of pressed oil, crushed herbs, and something sweet baking nearby. You return to the rooftop from earlier, the one with the view of the skyline and the lazy cat. The cat is still there, cleaning its paws like it's running a spa. You sit beside it. It doesn't move, which you take as approval. The city spreads out before you, ziggurat glowing in the low light, smoke curling from kitchen chimneys, silhouettes of people moving through doorways, calling to one another, laughing, working, living. And you sit in the middle of it all, coated in dust, your robe now a full tapestry of stains and folds, and you feel whole, not because you did anything heroic, not because you solved a mystery or changed the course of empires, but because you walked, you listened, you saw, and sometimes that's enough. Evening descends slowly, like a warm blanket pulled gently over the city. Babylon's light softens. Shadows grow longer, gentler, like ink soaking slowly into parchment. You linger on the rooftop as voices rise in a new cadence, lower, more melodic, the rhythm of winding down. Below you hear clinking pots and the occasional burst of laughter. The cat beside you finally stretches, yawns with royal drama, and hops down to vanish into the night, like a small, furry ghost. You take the hint. It's time to wander again. You make your way down the steps, careful not to trip on the uneven stone. Your legs protest. They've done quite enough today, but curiosity wins out. Again. You pass a home where someone is roasting something over a brazier. You can't identify it, but it smells like spices and patience. Inside, shadows flicker on the wall from a single oil lamp. A child sits in a lap, being told a story in soft tones. You pause, unseen, at the edge of the doorway just to hear the cadence. Even if you don't know the words, you know the feeling. Onward. You spot a woman grinding grain with a large stone mortar. Her sleeves are rolled, her braids wrapped in cloth. Each motion is rhythmic. Grind, turn, sweep. Her daughter pours the flour into a jar, grinning as a small dust cloud poofs up and settles on her face. The mother blows gently, then laughs. You catch her eye. She nods. You nod. Another little thread in the tapestry. Further along, the ziggurat looms closer. Not by plan, you've simply wandered in its direction. Its steps glow faintly in the light of torches lining the base. From up top, chants begin again, this time lower, more solemn. Priests begin their night offerings. Herbs, incense, maybe wine. You can't see them clearly, just robes moving like shadows in moonlight. Historians still argue whether these nighttime rituals were purely religious or tied to astronomy, charting the stars for harvests, omens, or simply the passing of time. Whatever the reason, they're beautiful. You stand still and let the sound float over you, like music meant for someone else but generously shared. A hand tugs your sleeve. You turn and find a girl, maybe 10 holding a lantern made of stretched hide and wood. She points to a narrow alley where others are gathering. Lanterns flicker in the dusk like fireflies. A festival? A procession? You follow. The alley opens into a courtyard strung with woven garlands and soft lights. Families sit on mats, eating, sharing bowls, whispering stories. A boy performs a trick with clay cups and a pebble. Everyone laughs when he accidentally drops one. Music begins again. Reed flutes, and something percussive that might be a hand drum or a flipped pot. Someone hands you a bowl, stew, fragrant with lentil, garlic, and something leafy. You accept it with both hands, as you've learned is polite. The person nods and disappears into the crowd. You find a corner, sit and eat slowly, savoring each bite. You've forgotten about time zones, notifications, and the slightly damp sock in your shoe. Here, it's just stew, stars, and murmured conversation in a language you're starting to feel, even if you'll never speak. After a while, a boy with wide eyes and wild hair stands before the gathering and begins a story. Everyone hushes. His voice rises and falls in practiced arcs. He paces, gestures, pauses dramatically. You understand none of it, except for the laughter, the gasps, the held breath. The tale could be about a talking frog or a god disguised as a loaf of bread. It doesn't matter. You're caught in it. As he finishes, the courtyard erupts into claps, stomps, and a few tossed fig leaves that appear to be a local version of roses. You stay a little longer, listening to the conversations float past, some sharp, some slow, some rhythmic like lullabies. One man nearby is explaining something about barley storage in a tone of passionate drama. Another describes a dream involving a lion, a staircase, and a goat who owed him money. You're not sure which is more mythical. Eventually, the crowd begins to thin. Children are gathered up, bowls are stacked, and lanterns are gently extinguished. You rise too, your legs heavy but your heart oddly light. You wander past a small garden patch again, only now it's moonlit, silent, peaceful. The same old woman is there, humming to her plants as she waters them. Yes, even now. She sees you and beckons you over. From her pouch, she removes a small bundle of dried herbs and presses it into your hand. You don't ask. You just bow slightly. She smiles. You are dismissed like a well-fed cat. You pocket the herbs, lavender, mint, and something unfamiliar but pleasant, and make your way back toward the direction of your borrowed room. Along the way, the city softens even more. Sounds fade. Light flattens into warm embers. A man snuffs out a torch near his doorway. A dog curls into a basket. A woman draws her curtain shut, the fabric rustling like reeds. The stars have come out in full now. You can see them clearly, unbothered by the glare of cities yet to come. The constellations look different. Or maybe they're just older here, more patient. You climb one last set of stairs, your sandals dragging slightly, and reach the rooftop again. The fig tree sways in the same slow rhythm. The night air wraps around you like linen. You lie down on the mat, letting the sounds of the city settle into your bones. There's no need for pillows or blankets. Just cool stone beneath you, a sky overhead, and the knowledge that you've survived another day in the chaos, dust, and wonder of Babylon. You close your eyes, and for the first time in what might be centuries, you sleep in the past. You wake before dawn, not because of an alarm, but because Babylon itself stirs you. The city breathes around you. You hear the soft thump of footsteps, a clay pot being set down gently, the flap of fabric as someone stretches out laundry in the dark, trying to get ahead of the day. The stars are still out, but the sky above the ziggurat is starting to pale, the faintest wash of blue bleeding into the black. The temple bell rings once low, resonant. It's not meant for you, but it finds you anyway. You sit up slowly, your back complains, your ankles crack like kindling. You're definitely not made for ancient rooftops, but strangely, you don't mind. A kettle somewhere starts to hiss. The scent of boiling herbs drifts upward mint, maybe a hint of cardamom. You take a long breath. It's like drinking without lifting a cup. You descend the stairs barefoot, your sandals forgotten. The stone feels cool underfoot, grounding, real. The alleys are quiet, but not empty. A baker opens his shop front with a creak. A boy sweeps the street with a palm broom. A woman walks with a basket on her head, and two sleepy goats in tow. The city isn't loud yet, but it's definitely awake. You head toward the ziggurat, drawn not by obligation, but by something quieter. Curiosity. Reverence, even. The priests are already gathered on the lower steps, their white robes ghostly in the half-light. They chant softly, a low hum that settles in your chest like a purring cat. You stand at a respectful distance and watch as one priest lights a bowl of incense. The smoke coils upward, silver and slow. Someone sprinkles crushed petals into a basin of water. The petals float, then sink. Historians still argue whether these sunrise rites were meant to honor the gods, mark the calendar, or simply give people a reason to get out of bed with purpose. Whatever the original intent, it feels right. Like the city is aligning itself with the sky. A young acolyte notices you and offers a palmful of something tiny seeds, dark and fragrant. You take them, unsure whether to eat, scatter, or keep them. You choose to press them gently into the soil at your feet. He smiles. Apparently, that's one of the correct answers. You linger as the sky grows brighter. From this height, The city stretches out like a woven rug mud brick and laundry lines, rooftops and alleyways, all stitched together in sunlit thread. A group of women arrives with baskets of fruit, placing offerings before small carved figures set into the temple walls. One of them, an elder with a long braid and a cane, waves you over. She presses a fig into your hand, soft and warm. You say thank you in 3 different languages. She laughs, points to your mouth, then your heart. You get the message. You bite into the fig. It tastes like morning. As the chants end and the crowd disperses, you descend the steps slowly. The city has changed while you watched, now fully awake, humming with purpose. But your pace is slower. You're not rushing toward anything, just meandering, existing. You find yourself once again at the riverbank, now bathed in morning light. Children splash near the shore, catching fish with baskets. An old man sits with his feet in the water, muttering at a turtle who doesn't seem to be listening. You join him, removing your sandals and letting your toes dip into the cool current. The mud squishes pleasantly. The turtle regards you with ancient indifference and swims away. Fair enough. You sit there a while, just watching the water. A boy nearby asks if you're a merchant. You shake your head. A priest? Another shake. A foreigner? That one earns a shrug. The boy considers you, then decides you must be the dream visitor someone told him about. He nods solemnly, as if confirming his own theory, and then runs off to tell someone else. You decide not to argue with legend. Eventually, you rise, stretch, and walk again. You pass the scribe school, where students are once again tapping away at clay tablets. You wave to the teacher, who barely hides his surprise that you're still in one piece. The market is setting up again. You see the fig vendor from yesterday, still smiling, still somehow wider than before. He recognizes you and offers another fig. You decline with a polite wave. He nods with mock sorrow, then mimes turning into a ghost. You both laugh. You make your way back to your borrowed room. It's quiet now, the shutter still ajar, sunlight slanting across the clay floor. Your reed mat awaits. So does your robe, dustier than before. And beside it, on a small dish, someone has left a piece of sweet cake. Perhaps your host, or perhaps the city itself. You sit cross-legged, break the cake in half, and eat slowly. Outside, the noise rises again, the layered symphony of daily life. Footsteps, wheels haggling, goats, laughter, wind. You realize you're part of the rhythm now, not fluent, but no longer foreign. And you've lasted more than a day. You stretch out on the mat. The ceiling above you is decorated with a faded pattern swirls and dots. Maybe stars, maybe flowers. You stare at it until it begins to sway gently, not from movement, but from memory. You smile, not because everything made sense, but because everything didn't have to. This isn't your time. It's not your city. But it held you anyway, and that's more than enough. Your eyes drift closed, but the city refuses to let you go just yet. Somewhere nearby, a final cart rolls by, its wheels creaking like tired bones. A dog lets out a half-hearted bark, more out of habit than alarm. A baby cries, then is soothed. The reed mat beneath you shifts slightly as you exhale. You turn your head, just enough to see the doorway. The light outside has softened again, falling into that in-between hour where day forgets it was ever sharp, and night hasn't quite remembered its stars. The world becomes watercolor. Babylon, even in its noise, learns how to hush. You sit up once more, just to savor it. A woman walks past with a covered jar balanced on her shoulder, singing softly to herself. The note catches on the air, bounces off the walls, and vanishes. From a nearby rooftop, you hear two old men chuckling in low voices, swapping stories or maybe arguing about who used to have better teeth. It's impossible to tell. You step outside barefoot, feet finding their place on the worn stone. The ground still holds the memory of the day's heat, radiating upward in a quiet goodbye. You wander, just a little. One final walk, one more round of just one more observations. You know you won't remember everything tomorrow, but maybe you'll remember how the shadows hugged the corners, how the scent of warm lentils and olive oil lingered longer than it had any right to, how even the air seemed tired, but not in a bad way. You pass the same fig tree, the same sleepy goats, the same crooked bridge where you'd nearly face-planted into dried fish just a few hours ago. It all feels yours now, in the way a story you didn't write still becomes part of your memory. A young girl dances past you, trailing colored cloth behind her. She doesn't look at you, but she knows you're there. She's part of this city, and for a heartbeat, so are you. You return to your room as the night finally settles in. One oil lamp flickers on the wall, casting golden pools across the cracked plaster. You stretch out again on the mat, the linen pillow now slightly more agreeable than before. It even smells faintly of lavender. You feel the day unfurl behind your eyes, the fig vendor's grin, the fishmonger's parade, the stubborn goat, the scribes, the prayers, the stew, the pomegranate juice still faintly staining your fingertips. You've seen Babylon not as a postcard ruin, not behind glass or beneath museum lights, but alive, loud, grimy, gracious, real. You take one last deep breath. The air tastes of clay, jasmine, and ink. The heartbeat of the city slows. And finally, so do you. Now there's nothing left to chase. No more fig vendors, no more temple steps, no bustling streets or whispered trades or bowls of lentils to count. Just the quiet weight of sleep pressing gently against your chest. The world you've wandered fades into soft amber light, like the glow of a distant lamp behind a curtain of linen. Shapes blur, voices drift. You no longer need to follow the alleys, or dodge fish baskets, or wonder about the taste of ancient stew. You've done enough. Let your breathing slow. Let your thoughts untangle like threads pulled from a loom. Each knot, each loop, gently coming undone. You're not in Babylon anymore. Not exactly. But some part of you will always be there now, folded into the corners of a market stall, woven into the sound of ziggurat bells ringing at sunrise. You'll remember the warmth of clay underfoot, the flicker of oil lamps against carved stone, the way a stranger handed you a fig, like it was the most natural gift in the world. That's how the past holds us, not with facts or dates, but with feelings, with fragments, with fig juice on your fingertips and sandal dust in your dreams. So let that memory carry you. Let your thoughts melt into the hush of ancient night. There's no need to hold on. The city is sleeping now, and so are you. Sweet dreams.